one of the leading anti-poverty organizations for more than 40 years, going back to 1968 as the Center for Community Change. Mary Lassen is the managing director.
I want to say that since the Center for Community Change was founded in 1968, that one through line to our work has been that low-income people themselves, particularly in communities of color, need to make the changes that improve the communities and the public policies where they live. And that conviction that people who are personally affected by economic and social injustice are best equipped to know what change is needed and how to get there has to be central to our work moving forward. You've already heard a little bit about the fact that since the Housing Now March 25 years ago, there's actually been significant backwards movement on affordable housing with an unbelievable backing off of federal investment in affordable housing since that time. And we've seen some change that TJ mentioned in terms of who is among the homeless, with an increasing number of women and children now counted among the growing number of people without a home. In the last 30 years, the Housing Trust Fund project here at CCC has been a bright spot in terms of what's possible in terms of affordable housing work at the state and local level. And during this time, we've helped create over 700 local housing trust funds to develop dedicated funding streams for affordable housing across the country. And I think there are a couple of lessons out of that I just want to share very briefly before we open things up. One is that it is possible, particularly in local communities, to bring together people who are themselves homeless, who are advocates, together with public health, education, government officials, and developers. And we've seen that happen in a number of places across the country. And running local campaigns where putting a face on what homelessness is all about has really helped to develop some capacity for long-term fights. So a couple of examples. In Bellingham, Washington, in 2012, there was a ballot measure that generated $20 million to address homelessness and housing needs of very low-income families. In Lexington, Kentucky, there was recently a housing trust fund passed with a strong coalition of faith, community organizing groups, public health and educators, and public utilities. And these kinds of broad alliances with low-income people themselves and homeless people themselves at the center can be replicated in other places. That involves cultivating and developing the capacity of local leaders and making sure that from the start their involvement is central. I want to close by saying just a little bit about a big, bold initiative that the Center for Community Change has embarked on. We're in the early stages of a 10-year campaign to take on poverty in this country. And at the core of this economic justice campaign is the engagement of the 106 million people that we've heard about who are living at 200% or less than the federal poverty level. And I would say in places like Washington, D.C., where the cost of living is so high, that means that those are the very people that TJ was talking about who are getting bounced out of housing. Today, the economy in our country is off balance. Wages, as Peter said, have remained stagnant, while the cost of housing and other basic needs have continued to rise. The wealthiest are the ones who are benefiting, while more and more people struggle to earn enough to provide for our families. So that's the long-term vision that we need to tackle. And we believe that it is possible to create a society in which everyone has enough to thrive. This will only take place within the context of a powerful national movement for economic justice that brings people together who are working on housing, who are working on jobs, who are working on food issues, kind of across the board. And it must be led by those people who are directly affected. And there are three things that we believe are important in this. One is increasing the scale and intensity of collective action, things like the Housing Now March by low-income people. And we want to think that that means engaging lots of new people who are not now part of organizations to become involved in organizing, in voting, and in online action. It means making poverty reduction a broadly held political goal. And we want to see a vibrant public debate about these issues in the run-up to the 2016 elections. And we invite all of you here today to work with us on that. And finally, it means enacting large-scale public policy change and changes in the private sector that have a concrete and measurable impact on lifting individuals and families out of poverty. Breakthroughs like the $15 an hour minimum wage victory in Seattle are an example of what that can look like. So we are focusing on jobs, on improving the quality of jobs in low-wage industries, and removing barriers to employment for people who are formerly incarcerated, and creating new opportunities for jobs that are accessible to people who've been shut out of the economy. And this movement that all of you are involved in for affordable housing is key if we're going to make a real dent.